say in one sentence or less what... you know what I mean. Can you say why America is the greatest country in the world?
Diversity and opportunity.
Lewis?
Freedom and freedom. So let's keep it that way.
Will?
The New York Jets.
No, I'm going to hold you to an answer on that. What makes America the greatest country in the world?
Well, Lewis and Sharon said it. Diversity and opportunity and freedom and freedom.
I'm not letting you go back to the airport without answering the question.
Welcome to Sundays Live, and I think we're going to have quite the topic today. You know, in theory, I would hope that most people would say yes, but from my lives in the past, I've had many people that seemingly would say no to this question. So as we're just getting started, if you're scrolling by, thanks for the likes, and I hope you stay tuned. I know it's easy to swipe by and watch other lives, but we've had some pretty good lives in the past on various different topics, all related to civics. So hopefully most people have been enjoying those topics. They've been, you know, not controversial, but of course, some people have varying different opinions. In today's topic, do you support democracy and the U.S. Constitution? And you'll be able to jump in the box and tell me why. So join me and tell me why or why not. I mean, we've had everything. I've had people that seem to support fascism on the line. I've had people that support communism. Of course, we've had people from MAGA, liberals, progressives, libertarians, and everything in between. And when I say libertarians, that gives me, as we're waiting for more people to join, to give you all something to chew on. Think about libertarianism. I'm going to bring up the definition in a moment, just so I. Libertarianism. All right, not going to bring it up. It takes me too long, and you guys are going to swipe by and get bored. But people who claim to be libertarians, people like Peter Thiel, who was one of the original CEOs of PayPal, and a lot of Silicon Valley, and a lot of these technocrats, if you want to call them, but these Silicon Valley tech billionaires claim to be libertarians. And libertarian sounds awesome, right? In terms of, in theory and in concept, if you're not sure what a libertarian is someone who promotes small government, and people should be able to make all the decisions on their own, and limited government as much as possible, and as much freedoms. Sounds wonderful. And there's more to it, of course. But libertarianism, who people claim that that's what they are, it's not a form of government. Let's just put it like that. It's not a form of government. People think about it as like, because I think in order to have a form of government, you'd have to have a government around the world that has been libertarian, or a libertarian government. And there are none. They don't exist. It's because libertarianism is a pipe dream. It's a fantasy. It's fiction. It could never happen because it's based on this premise that people will always do right, and you don't need many laws to keep people in check, or to, keep crime down low, or you don't need money for the government, and the government needs to be abnormally small. You don't need to collect a lot of taxes, because then you don't have many social services. You may not even have roads, right? So if you're interested in being a libertarian, I would urge you to first read the definition carefully, and then see if it makes any sense, and does it really apply to anything? Because there is no government that's a libertarian government. So you may as well be agnostic at that point. And I'm not blaming people in concept for wanting to be or claiming to be a libertarian. It's just, it's not, there are candidates that claim to be libertarian, but it's not a functional form of government, because government requires more regulations and some balance of power between, in our case, states and the federal government. and others. So I wonder if I'm being suppressed by, interesting, not many people joining it. Maybe it's just a bad time of day on a Sunday, but most of the time there's a lot more people in the room already by now. So I've noticed with my videos, they're about the past week or two, they're getting suppressed. So in case TikTok gets even more suppressive when Larry Ellison and Oracle take over, that's certainly going to happen, or almost certainly going to happen. Please subscribe to right there, that link for the other place, because I'm going to have to diversify. My audience is growing pretty quickly here, but I'm going to need to diversify much more quickly onto other platforms, because we all know that many of the social media platforms, or most, and even the media, is being controlled by people that want to control who you can hear, who can broadcast their free speech, or who can broadcast their freedom of expression. So I hope not to get, because I'm not certainly left or right as a fierce independent. I'm right down the middle on a lot of issues, and I will certainly call out both sides. And I do all the time, because I think it's ridiculous that we keep fighting blue versus red. And we need to do something different. And it's going to take the 75 million independents in the middle. They're going to have to step up to do something. So reading a couple comments as more people join. U.S. Constitution, yes. Democracy, no. I believe in a constitutional republic. Well, Murphman, I understand the complexity there, but let's just talk about that for a moment as we wait for more people to join and jump in the box. You can't believe in democracy, yes, and then, or yes to democracy. Well, what are you saying? U.S. Constitution, yes. Democracy, no. Sorry. So U.S. Constitution, yes. Democracy, no. Believe in a constitutional republic. Well, then I would urge you to please look that up, because you have your comprehension of wrong what these things are. A constitutional republic is a representative democracy, which is what we are, is a constitutional republic. You can claim we're a representative democracy or a constitutional republic. The thing is that all constitutional republics, the thing that you say you support, are representative democracies. A constitutional republic is within the confines of a representative democracy. So if you support a constitutional republic, not just a republic, then you have to support democracy, because they go hand in hand. So I probably understand maybe where you're coming from, but you're wrong, because the constitutional republic is a form of democracy, because a representative democracy is a democracy. Indeed, you may not like that word. That's your choice. And Rachel, again, you're buying in. You're not doing your homework, and which is okay. It's hard to understand these things. America is a republic. It is not a republic. It is a constitutional republic. Stop listening to people that are trying to poison your mind and get you to believe that America is just a republic, because republics don't have to be democracies. And that's the whole point of all this nonsense from these other influencers, particularly on the right, who are saying we're a republic. And when they say that, that means it can be disassociated from being a democracy. That's why they do it. But we are not a republic. Republics can be many different things. They can be autocracies. They can be authoritarian. Republics are not democracies. And constitutional republics are not anything but democracy. So you can go on to AI, you can go on to Google, do your homework, but the more you keep hearing people saying it's a republic, there is a motive there. And that's a motive of those forces, let's say the corporate monarchy, people that support corporate monarchy, which a lot of the Silicon Valley billionaires are, who want us to be a corporatocracy or a corporate monarchy. You will hear them convey, and other people on MAGA who just don't do their homework and comprehension, say that we're a republic, we're not a democracy. It's BS. You're getting manipulated. Words have meaning, and definitions have clear meanings, and you need to look at the definition of things. These are people, whether it was Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro, I think they both would have used the word republic to get people confused, or to get people to really realize, because I hear this all the time on my comments, America is a republic. No, we are not. Absolutely not. So, absolutely stupid post. You think that's a stupid post, huh? Well, I think I'm going to prove you wrong, that it's a stupid post, because I've had people claiming that they don't support the Constitution and democracy. Not a stupid post. There are people who are American citizens that don't support the Constitution and democracy. And like the last person that said we're a republic, that would case in point. If you say we're a republic, you don't support democracy, most likely. China is a democracy, Rachel. It is not. China is socialism, and it's run by a communist party. So it's not communism, it is socialism. Look it up. It's the only socialistic country in the world, and it's run by a communist government. So think about that for a moment. So you basically have communists or the Communist Party that set up socialism. It's sort of a hybrid between communism and socialism. China is not a democracy. You do not have something anywhere near the Bill of Rights, and you don't have individual rights like you do in a democracy. You are part of the state. In communism, this is where communism comes into play. Every individual is part of the state and acts in the best interest of the state. China is not a democracy. You can go there and you might feel like you're in a democracy because things could be, if you're in the major cities, things can be really nice and beautiful and you can feel like you have all the freedoms until you do something that they don't like. It's not a democracy, not at all. So we are not a democracy. I'm a centrist. I'm going to listen to learn more. I'm actually a history buff. We never stop learning. Absolutely. Case in point, I don't know everything by any means. I never proclaim to be anything. I'm an advocate for knowing everything. Excuse me. I'm an advocate for civics. And that's what I do here. I'm trying to make advocate for civics. Civics is actually cool and it affects your life more than anything else in the world. And if we want to save our democracy and fully support the U.S. Constitution, like this prompt is right here, then we are going to have to educate people and they want to have to get involved because it's actually really interesting and not just interesting, but so impactful to whether you lead a fulfilling life or not. Let's see. So I think we are a democracy. You clearly don't know anything if you think we are a democracy. Good point. So Jack L. King 01. So let's address that quickly. You clearly don't know everything if you think we're a democracy. It's a good point. Technically, we are a representative democracy by the documents that our founding fathers created for us, and we are technically a representative democracy. But in practice, absolutely right. We are not a democracy in practice. We are much closer to a corporatocracy or a plutocracy, where the few, the rich and powerful, or the few, or the corporations, run things. And we technically still vote for people, which keeps us in some confines of technically being a democracy, but we're certainly not practicing or executing, or the people. So it's not that the administrative side or the documental side of things, we are absolutely a democracy. But in practice, in how we're executing things, we're certainly not acting like a democracy. We're certainly acting much more closer to some sort of plutocracy, corporatocracy, maybe even authoritarianism. So that's my comment to you there. And if anyone wants to jump in the box and talk about it, so you can click on the request button or the icon on the bottom of your screen where the pink and blue silhouette icon is. If you want to answer that question, you're welcome to join me here and have a civil discussion if you support democracy or not. There have been people on here that have been, like I said, communists that have openly said, I always say that people always tell you who they are, or they tell you and show you who they are, and all you need to do is watch and listen. And I will prove that probably today on this live stream. So Rachel says, I pledge allegiance to the flag in the United States of America and to democracy. Yeah, I don't know what your point is there. I'm assuming because it doesn't say the word democracy, again, you've probably heard that before. We're not a democracy because it's not listed in the U.S. Constitution as a democracy. I get it. Makes sense, or you would think it makes sense, but the Bible doesn't say Bible on it in your early scriptures. It was never defined as a Bible. Your birth certificate does not say human on it. Just because the word democracy is not in the Constitution, if you want to go back and read the Federalist Papers or the Anti-Federalist Papers and other aspects of the formation of the U.S. Constitution, they were clearly debating democracy was a term that was frequently used, but there's different forms of democracy. There's direct democracy like they have in Switzerland. There's representative democracy like we have here in the States. So There you go. That's right. It says we're a republic as well, but we're constitutional republic. Again, don't leave that out. We are a constitutional republic. Again, it sounds like you are trying to gaslight people and tell you what you think we are, but that's what we are. You can't change facts. Voting is the dumbest thing ever. Voting is just strangers telling other strangers how to live. No response to that. Thanks for the likes, and as more people are joining, again, I'm hoping someone jumps in the box and wants to have a civil debate about supporting democracy in the U.S. Constitution, because clearly, like Rachel here, thinks we're not a constitutional democracy, and she doesn't think we're a democracy at all, because she claims we're a representative democracy. She claims we're a republic and not a constitutional democracy. Again, at its formation and how the documents were created, that's what we technically are, but the people are the problem. If the people change it, that's part of the problem. So with that said, nope, we are a constitutional republic. That's right, Rachel. I don't know if you're trying to debate me through your comments here, but you're right. We are a constitutional republic, not just a republic. That is true. So maybe that's a different Rachel. I think it's the same one. If you don't like voting, then what is the alternative? A dictator would love to make the decisions. The U.S. is an oligarchy. There's studies to prove it. Yeah, I would agree with that, Rick. Or we have you jump in probably in a moment. You could make an argument that we're a corporate oligarchy. Studies probably would prove it. I'm not going to argue that fact. I think that you're, whether you define it as a corporatocracy or a plutocracy or a corporate oligarchy, those are all valid. I think, you could parse different aspects of those things to decide what we truly are in practice. Again, so the U.S. is an oligarchy. The U.S. was not an oligarchy. I think you probably mean it's acting like an oligarchy, or it's being executed as an oligarchy, that might very well be true. And that's what the left right now is saying. They don't want Bernie Sanders and AOC are claiming that we don't want an oligarchy, right? That's sort of what they're running on, going across the country, trying to inform people what an oligarchy is. An oligarchy, or you want to think of it as a mafia oligarchy style form of government. That's what you currently have in Russia. I am certainly all for the Bill of Rights and the Constitution as it was written, and it's an evolving document, and it should evolve. And of course, democracy as well. And as you can just see it from the comments that I have in here already, people claiming that we're not a democracy, and that is so concerning, because that just means the influences, particularly on the far right, are doing a really good job manipulating and poisoning your mind, claiming that we're a republic. And you have to go deeper and understand what the motive is. They're playing chess while you're playing checkers. They're playing chess and getting you to convince you we're a republic. So when they do say, which some people have been saying already, we're not a democracy, that when they take over, when the corporations take over, or a small group of billionaires take over, and they're going to say, hey, we're never meant to be a democracy anyway. You're going to already be seated with that in your head. And you're going to be like, oh, maybe we haven't been a democracy this whole time. And when these corporations take over, these individuals take over, as they're doing now, it's okay, because they're really smart people and they have our best interests in mind, and they'll be able to run the government better than we can as a democracy anyway. That's all manipulations. That's what they're going to try and shove down or into your ears, to get you to believe between your ears that what they're saying is right. And it's just all manipulation and poisoning of your mind. If you want to read the Constitution, it's not that difficult. It's 7 articles of the Constitution. Read all the amendments. It's really easy to learn. You can learn it in a day or two and have it and understand. And then you can go deeper and read the Federalist Papers and Anti-Federalist Papers and other aspects on how we got here. But I don't care whether you do or not. I think most Americans, or loyal Americans, or dedicated Americans, or relative patriotic Americans understand that the U.S. Constitution is the greatest form of democracy. Oh, thank you for the gift. Awesome. Hey, I love that. Let's see if I can do that too. I got some sound effects here, working on my studio in my garage. So pretty soon it's going to get cold out here, and I'm going to be going into a studio and I got some sound effects and a good way to increase the volume for those people who want to join, and other cool aspects. So thanks for the gift. That's really welcome. I appreciate that very much. So just got the number 2 gifter badge. Thank you there. So no one follows it now, not the judges or the attorney, jail, hospital. Not everyone is doing a job. Paraphrase Sarah Smiles 419. You're right. You know, I had a live yesterday where I talked about that America is broken. And people were suggesting, are you saying it's really the democracy in America is broken? And I kept saying, yes, it's broken. It's clearly broken. But I didn't do a good job of conveying the difference here. So the documents and the framework of the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all the other amendments, that's not broken at all. People think that the Constitution needs to be changed dramatically or maybe an all new document, whatever, new form of government. There's nothing broken about the U.S. Constitution. It's evolving. It's supposed to evolve over time. But what is broken is the people in government. That's what makes America broken. If you don't have judges and the people and all the politicians backing the document, referring back to the Constitution, and enacting the Constitution like the way it's supposed to be, then you have a broken political system. And again, not the document, the people. If you want to put in shitty people, bad people, corrupt people, dysfunctional people, uneducated people, you go on and on, right? If you want to put in bad people, let's just frame it as something that high level. If you want to put in bad people in government, you are going to have bad government. It is guaranteed. If you want to put in sociopaths and psychopaths into government, or people who are not well-meaning, or just transactional people don't have values and don't have moral integrity, then you're going to get bad government no matter what the document says. And that's what you have in the Supreme Court right now. That's what you have in the vast majority of politicians, is you have people that are either transactional, just trying to enrich themselves, or working in the best interest of corporations and all the special interest and the billionaires. That's where you have bad government. So the system's not, the political system per se, as the framework, is not broken. And that's what I talked about yesterday. But the people are certainly broken, and we've allowed that to happen. So yes, how can we fix this? One step at a time, one convention at a time, not fights, convo, right? Conversation. I agree, but we're going to be a little bit more aggressive. I've talked about this all the time. That's why I have this channel, is you fix it. You can't just vote blue and then you can't vote red. You can't have this pendulum going back and forth, because we realize things aren't getting better. The people in government on both parties, or let's say not all the people in the parties, but both parties themselves as an organization, as private, basically corporations. That's how the parties are. Certainly they're corporate-backed government agencies. Oh, that's not even the right way to say it. The parties are private, more or less private companies. But both of those parties are fully compromised by money from special interest billionaires and corporations, and especially on the special interest side with all the different special interests, and they're not representing the people. So you have to fix it by doing something different than voting just red or blue. And that's what this channel is about. It's stop fighting about red versus blue, and let's start to look towards something different. Let's see. All right, the parties are on the same team against you. Yes, well, in different ways, that is true. USA is a corporation. It's not, it's still a government, but governments do have, let's say, the vast majority of say, so it's a little bit more nuanced. Overturn Citizens United. That's true. That would be helpful, but that's not enough. We're so far down this path, just overturning a law that could be overturned again. You know, everybody thought the sort of abortion rights was settled until it wasn't, right? You had precedents, but precedents was ignored. So laws themselves can't fix things. That just makes things go back and forth and twist around a little bit. We need constitutional amendments. Crazy how we're coming up on U.S. 250-year birthday. That's right. We're almost 250 years as the greatest constitutional republic the world has ever seen. And people are already basically saying it should go away. People say no empire, if you want to call it that, has ever lasted more than 300 years. I actually didn't know exactly how to challenge that the other day. That is actually not true. the Roman Empire in its glory days and was 500 years, and overall it was 1,500 years, and before that it was like another 1,000 years. So the Roman Empire in different facets, from when it was a republic, from when it was an empire, to when it was more of an autocratic style government, that varied. But there's no reason that American democracy has to go away today. And some people believe the days are over. And I'm trying to sit here and say it's not. If 50 to 70 million people want to change it, and they have to come from red and blue and mostly independents, it can be changed. It takes a large mass of people to do it. 50 to 70 million people is a lot of people, but it's not too many people. It's actually achievable. And 50 to 70 million Americans could change the direction of the world if there were 50 to 70 million people. So debate Dean Withers. I watch Dean fairly often. I pay attention to, it seems like Dean and Parker, good young men who are very intelligent, doing what they think they can, but really all they're doing for the most part is belittling people. They're educating maybe people as well, but I'm not into this blue versus red. They seem to me as just a little shallow in that they're just doing things for views and money to just argue against a certain side. And whether it was Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro doing the same thing on the other side, I don't view these influencers who just take a side, either a blue side or a red side, and they argue their points, as they're not part of the solution. They are part of the problem. And that's a shame, because if these people use their platforms to actually get people to take their heads out of their sand, and instead of belittling them, they relate to them a little bit, and they say, well, listen, the blue party's not going to save you. The red party's not going to save you. It has to be something different. And it just seems like I just go through my feed. And of course, since I speak about civics and politics, that's most of my feed is about that. And you just see so many people, why do you support Trump? Debate me, like this, all this nonsense. It doesn't help. You might change a few minds here and there, but it's not helping us as America come together, because it's not about left versus right, blue versus red. It's about top versus down. It's about the powerful, the rich and powerful versus the weak and the poor, and the haves versus the have-nots. However you want to frame it, the top versus the bottom. That's where the game is being played, right? There is a game being played of manipulation. They're using social media to do it, and of course, regular media as well, to divide people. And that's the timeless strategy of divide and conquer. If they keep it's timeless. Right? It's been done for thousands of years. If you want to take over a civilization, you divide its people mentally. You divide them in different points of view, and then you can conquer them. This is how it works. It's not a complicated thing. That's why it's been used for thousands of years. It's highly effective, and it works every time. Who are they? Control, Shift, N. When I refer to they, I do hate that term, when you just say they and you don't put context on it. To me, they, let's take it as special interests, because special interest is a really broad term, and I even use it much too broad. When I say they, there's lots of different forces at the top. They could be the corporations who are just trying to manipulate government to get their way, lower taxes, better trade deals, et cetera, et cetera. They could also be the few top billionaires, the Peter Thiels, Elon Musks, Mark Zuckerberg, and others of the social Silicon Valley. They are those people who want to turn us into a corporate monarchy. They are also foreign agents from Russia, China, Israel, and everywhere else that are trying to manipulate our government into doing something nefarious. They are also white or Christian nationalists who don't believe in the Constitution. I had one on the other day that doesn't believe in the Constitution, believe that they want to return to the roots, like they believe there was something else, but the U.S. Constitution is a secular document. And I would say they are, with the foreign influences, I call them religious fascists. These religious fascists, and I don't care where they come from, what religion they are, but they tend to be from one religion, that are trying to take democracy or America back to what they think are the roots and what they think are true patriots. That is also they. They are probably the most dangerous. And I have a video coming out soon from a conversation I had a few days ago that really took me aback a little bit, because I believed, all right, maybe I didn't believe, but it became more clear how many people in the country don't support the U.S. Constitution and democracy. I see it here as well. See, there you go. And who's that? Tin Man, 12522. Liberals hate America. You've been poisoned. Stop with the adolescent commenting, liberals hate America. You could easily argue that liberals are every bit as patriotic as the conservatives. You are just falling into the trap because you have some perceived hate against liberals, mostly probably due to social media and media, that liberals hate America. Nonsense, childish, and you're just falling into the divide and conquer trap, because as long as we stay divided and as long as you hate liberals, like, the hate is so bad on both sides that we're doing some ridiculous things. We're much better than what we're acting, and we're being divided to fight one another. And you might be so far gone that you can never come back. I hope not. I hope if you actually are religious and you're on the right, that you go and read the Bible. And maybe you'll realize that you shouldn't hate liberals. And maybe you should actually do what's in your best interest. And the whole democracy is based on compromise. And you can go right back to the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers, where the Federalists were Hamilton, who else? Hamilton and others who wrote the Federalist Papers, and they wanted a federal government. They wanted a strong federal government in order to have a military, to protect society, and to have federal rules. And then the Anti-Federalists wanted more states' rights and more individual rights, and that's how we ended up having the Bill of Rights. And the idea there is that the Federalists didn't win and the Anti-Federalists didn't win. They both won. They both got what they needed to make America what it was, and that was compromise. They were both right. So people who are in favor of individual rights and state rights, they won, the Anti-Federalists, but also the Federalists won, because it was no doubt that we needed a very strong central government in order to have a military and in order to prevent ourselves or the states from fighting one another. So hate, I love when I see it, or I dislike when I see that word hate in the comments, because then I know I'm dealing with someone that's either too far gone or is just, I don't know. You can't reason with unreasonable people. And people always tell you who they are. So we fight amongst yourselves while more wealth gets sent to the 1% while we are distracted. Absolutely true. I talk about it all the time, that the wealthiest people and corporations are not paying their fair share of taxes, and it's costing us $3 trillion a year. 3 trillion, not billion. It's 5 trillion is the total amount we collect each year as the federal government, around 4.9 to 5 trillion. And if corporations and individuals, not individuals, ultra wealthy individuals paid their fair share of taxes, we would add between 2 trillion and 3.2 trillion to our revenue. And then we could also do all kinds of things. And we also need to cut out the waste and the corruption and the overspending. So not about just more revenue. It needs to be both. That's why we try not to argue with liberals, right? Yeah, because you can't argue with liberals when you don't come to, I'm not a liberal, by the way, I'm a fierce independent. So again, people trying to put you in a bucket. Again, that's exactly what people in the blue and the red do. Is you have to be in a bucket. You have to be on a tribe. You have to be that tribal mentality where you have to be, placed or demeaned or discredited. And put it, I've never been a part of either political party, and I am a fierce independent. And you can try and claim, if that's what you were trying to do here, claim that I'm a liberal. It just means you don't know your shit. You don't know what you're talking about. It just means you're more interested in having fights and name calling, because that's what a lot of people do. They just do name calling. So both Democrats and Republicans are liberals by definition. That is true. That's interesting, because I know, Rick, you're very liberal, to say the least. And by definition, we live in a liberal democracy. And conservatives, or MAGA, hate that definition because it has the two words that they've been persuaded to hate. We are a progressive liberal democracy. That is facts. Let's go. So I'm not a liberal. I'm a communist. Absolutely. I've said that in the past as well. So does anyone want to answer the question, do you support democracy and the U.S. Constitution. Join me and tell me why or why not. Let's see if there's anyone in the box. Rick, you're the only one in the box, and I know we tried yesterday. So, Rick, just tell me in the comments here. I'm not going to debate you too long today, but I want to make sure you got a good microphone today and you're in the right place in order to join. But if there's anyone else that wants to join as well, because I want to hear from different voices, today's topic is, do you support democracy and the U.S. Constitution? Join me and tell me why or why not. And I'd love to hear you why. And it will always learn something from each other. We'll learn. We always do different perspectives, whether I think you're right or wrong. It's not that important. I want to have a healthy debate, again, with views, and my job is to, I'd like, if anything, I could say explainer in chief, which I know is a little ambitious, but if I can help explain things to people and give people a different perspective and get their head out of the blue sand or the red sand and realize that it has to be something different. So I just saw that comment. Rick, so just stand by 1 second. Let me just read a couple more comments. I have 2 felonies, was arrested twice for things in Constitution. No one follows it. Jail is bad. Yeah, jail is bad. I can imagine anyway. Haven't been there myself. Hope never to be there. The government picks and chooses what they support in the Constitution. That's right. The government. Well, on Saturdays, when you think government, replace government with certain people, right? There's nothing wrong with government. When people say government is the problem, not the solution, that is a poisoning of your mind to get you to believe that government is bad or is inherently bad. A democracy in form of government is the only government that actually is supposed to represent the people, or a representative democracy supposed to represent you. And in that form, if it's effective, it's not bad. Government is healthy and it's good, but we're all under the impression that government is bad or it's the part of the problem, not the solution. It's not government is bad. It's the people in government that make government bad. So people are bad. Government is not bad. People are bad. And people are also good. So it just depends what type of government you want. But it can't be just that broad. I see. Okay. So, Rick, you're up. And thanks for all the likes, everybody. Jump on the likes and the badges. They really help expose the live to more people. This is a rare Sunday live. I'm going to try and do more of them in the future and keep the conversation going for however long it takes. Welcome back to the show, Rick. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Let me bump up your volume.
It's the time that you're on. It's convenient. Yeah, so this idea that the U.S. Constitution is about democracy it seems ahistorical to me. If you read the Federalist Papers, most of the founding fathers, they had a form of democracy because they didn't have any better ideas. Most of them didn't like it. I mean, a lot of them wanted to recreate a new monarchy. And so this idea that the Constitution is made for democratic control by the people, it's kind of silly, especially when you consider the people who made the democracy met in secret. They were slave owners. They restricted the democracy to white landowning men. They put a lot of stopgaps in case the democracy got out of hand. Things like the Senate, which is appointed at the time, things like the Electoral College, things like the Supreme Court, all sorts of very undemocratic things in the Constitution. So this idea that democracy and the U.S. Constitution go hand in hand just seems ahistorical. I don't understand what
I think you're conflating maybe conjecture with, they did discuss various forms of government. They considered everything. And you could sit there and say, well, this is the best form they could think of. Well, there was nothing else. They did consider direct democracy, but they thought that was also difficult and a threat in itself, and that was too hard to administer.
Sure,
but the Constitution...
There's also sortition, right? That's another way to have a democratic system. Right, yeah. Rather than election, sortition. And sortition is how Athens worked, right? That's how the Greek democracies work. Also, we can look at the governments that existed before colonization, which were much, much more democratic, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, right? Which is some of the constitutions modeled a little bit after that.
Yeah, but you're making an argument that a constitutional republic or the representative democracy that the Constitution is based on is not a democracy, and you could claim
not for the people.
I'm sorry.
It was democracy for the owning class, which is what it still is today. It's a democracy for owners of capital. That's who got to vote in the original Constitution, and those people that have tried to keep it for themselves the whole time.
Yeah, but like
And
we
there's
talked
been,
about the
like,
other
some
day,
people who've attempted to change that.
the Constitution did have its flaws, and you are right about slave ownership and other aspects, but again, you seem to miss the evolution of our history from the Constitution and the amendments that were put into place, and therefore, and of course, what happened with slavery after the 13th president, like we talked about the other day. So you are still claiming that, you seem to be claiming that it's not a democracy, and I don't get that. It's a democracy.
It's a bourgeois democracy. It's a democracy for the ruling class. That's
Well,
what we have
when
today.
you had established, you did
when
have.
we look at the people,
Yeah, go ahead.
when we look at the representatives that we have, almost all of them are millionaires. That's not representative of the population, of the people of America. Most people are not multimillionaires. Most people in government are.
That wasn't always
and
the
they
case.
Represent their class.
That
They
wasn't
rep-
even that wasn't always the case. It wasn't even close to always the
when
case.
was that? When was that not the case? When was that not the
Well,
case?
we'd have to go look to specifics, but there are many politicians that prior
give
to
me
getting
some.
into office that weren't millionaires, and that just proves the point that yes, when you get into
The majority always have been, though. The majority.
We'd
There's
have to
been
look
some.
at
I mean,
that.
there even been some more recently. There's people like Cory Bush, certainly. There's a handful that sneak past it, but when we look at like the majority, and the system was designed for that. It was designed initially.
No, I don't know about that. It just so happens that when you're wealthier, you have more time and maybe you have more influence and you have more money to actually work on getting elected. So there's been countless numbers of representations that have had very little money. So
Are you making the argument that like the founding fathers weren't the owning class?
no, I'm not making that argument. I didn't disagree with that.
Are you making the argument that the founding fathers weren't the owning class because they?
You're breaking up again, Rick. We can't hear you.
Why would they design a system that benefited other people? They had to meet in secret. Oh, Jesus. Is that better now?
Yeah, maybe. It's hard to know. Okay. They met
yeah,
in
it should be
secret.
better
They
now.
met in Philadelphia.
They had to meet in secret.
So I don't know what that point is. What does that mean? They met in secret, or they met in private. Is private and secret different?
Why did they? Who? No, they met in secret because there were a lot of people, like regular everyday people, that did not want them doing what they were doing.
Okay.
They were run out of town more than once before that. And like when we look at what happened immediately after the Constitution was ratified, the first thing they did was take the military and go after the people who were protesting the whiskey taxes during the Whiskey Rebellion. That's the very first thing they did, was send the military after regular everyday working people.
You know, it's still, when you go to a broader context, we can argue about some of the smaller aspects in those little issues, and you're not wrong about a lot of the things you say, but it still seems like you're.
That's not a little issue.
Of course, they are. Relative speaking, we're talking about broad terms of a constitutional republic and a democracy, and you're just trying to obviously discredit the foundation of what America stands for, and it is imperfect. It was always imperfect. It is an experiment, and you're just keep going on with these issues.
The people we're talking about.
That happens that's happened many times.
They formed the country. Part of the Declaration of the Independence was them arguing that they should be able to continue their genocide of indigenous people because the British wanted them to stop.
Okay, and I
That was
don't
part of the
know what your
Declaration of
point. I don't know what your
Independence.
point is.
Right? Like that's the foundation of the United States. Well, I mean, this idea, like you make out like this idea is that like they founded the United States because they wanted freedom and democracy for everyone, but that's ridiculous. It's just not.
It's not ridiculous.
It's ahistorical.
No, it is a incredible movement forward of evolution in terms of democracy, in terms of for the people, by the people. It was meant to be. That's why all men are created equal, even though they weren't in the beginning.
Democracy here.
Okay. Well, listen, Rick, I respect your point of view.
The indigenous people had democracy. And the founding fathers genocided the people who had democracy, replaced it.
And where are you going with this? Just to promote communism? Are you just going with this to promote communism? I mean, what's your point? To discredit the U.S. Constitution?
I'm talking about your topic. Your topic says, do you support democracy and the U.S. Constitution? I'm trying to say that those things are not tied together. In fact, I would say that they're mutually exclusive.
Oh, that's absurd. Now you're doing revisionist history.
Democratic.
That's revisionist history, and that is absolutely not true because.
What have I said that's ahistorical? What if I said it's ahistorical so far?
That the U.S. Constitution and the founding fathers didn't intend to set up a democracy. Yes, they did. They constantly talked about setting up a democracy.
Not for the people.
You may not as pure as you may.
They own slaves.
I get that.
You're telling me like not owning slaves is a purity test? If that's a purity test, call me Mr. Pure.
And then
okay?
after the
Like,
13th,
yeah,
and then
that's
we
the problem.
fought for slaves to be free after
And we
the
still have
13th.
slaves. Today, no, wait, the 13th Amendment says that you can still
Not
be
the
enslaved
13th Amendment,
as a
the 13th
condition if
president.
I thought you were talking about the 13th Amendment.
No, 13th
Like,
president.
the so-called abolishment of slavery.
I don't actually. What amendment is that? I'm gonna have to look it up.
That's the 13th Amendment.
Is it as well?
That's like
13th president and 13th Amendment?
yeah.
Maybe I got that wrong.
I don't. Who was the 13th? Is it Lincoln, the 13th president?
It
I
is.
don't even
It's
know
Lincoln.
the
Yeah,
numbers.
I'm almost certain it's Lincoln. Yes.
But the 13th Amendment is the one that says it abolishes the slavery except as punishment for a crime. And today in the United States, we have about 2 million people enslaved in our prison system. And most of them are it's disproportionately black people still to this day.
That's
So,
not
they're-
untrue. That's factual. That's true. I'm not saying that law and order has been. I'm not arguing that law and order is equal for all men like it's supposed to be. It's not about the
You also
purest.
don't have universal suffrage.
And you
Because
do
of
in
that, because
every
if you have a felony,
civilization.
or if you're imprisoned, or if you commit a felony, you don't get a vote either, right? And so we don't have universal suffrage still to this day.
Right. Okay.
And so much for democracy, right? Like,
Okay. I know you're obviously a big advocate for communism and not for democracy. So I understand your point of
I
view.
haven't spoken about communism at all. I haven't spoken about communism. not one
No,
time.
what we have in the
I thought
past.
we
That's
weren't
why I
gonna
brought
talk
it
about
up.
that.
That's why I brought it up.
Sure, but like but that's not like you're bringing it up. It's seemingly to change the subject. We're talking about democracy in America, which we don't have. It's just not-
You're advocating your point of view is your bias is towards something that's not democracy.
I haven't advocated for anything in this live. I've avoided it because it seems to make you uncomfortable when I talk about communism.
No, I don't. I'm not uncomfortable. I have you on. I didn't have to have you on if I was uncomfortable. I know where your perspective is coming from.
I wanted to stay on topic. The United States Constitution and democracy. They don't go.
You're looking at it in a more granular view than most people would. I am looking at it at a broader level in terms of all men are created equal, one vote, one person, one vote, all these sort of ideals that most Americans want to believe is true. And that's the direction we should be continuing to go in, away from oligarchy. We should be continuing to move in the evolution that the United States of America has been moving towards up until around the 1990s, where then we've sort of regressed. There was continual evolution over the last 220 years towards a more democratic, less corrupt system, a more fair system. It was never perfect. And that's the thing, you're trying to conflate what was originally was constructed versus what happened up until the 1990s. There were all types of fights, and there are in all civilizations, the civil rights and so forth. So I am pushing for, and you may not understand my context, that we are regressing away from some of the ideals that American democracy was based on, and that is the U.S. Constitution and the law of the land. It is an imperfect system. So is every other system, even the one that you prescribe to.
I'm not talking about perfect. I'm just saying that, like, for one thing, that we're overlooking is things like indigenous sovereignty, which is like something that
I know. I wouldn't
existence of
disagree
the
with you.
United States.
I'm not going to disagree with you, but that's going off. You could argue everything like that, of course. All right, Rick, you're in and out again. I'll have you on again for certain. We have another person in the waiting room. We both understand each other's points of view, and that's great. We clearly have differences of opinion. Oh, the person that was in the waiting room has dropped out. So I know that if you can let me know in the comments, were most people able to hear Rick clearly, or was he in and out like he did seem to be for me? It was choppy again. I always seem to get him when he's in the car, which I believe he was. And of course, then we have to deal with cell phone data. So I ask when you join, please make sure you're on Wi-Fi with good connectivity, or you're still somewhere else where you have good connectivity so people can hear you clearly. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Okay, so going back to some of the comments. Yeah, no problem. Rick, I'm happy to have disagreements. I don't mind disagreements. We kept it civil. Of course, we have very clear differences in thoughts, and that's completely fine. So I truly support democracy and not dictatorship. I'm with you, Lorraine. Of course, if anyone wants to jump in the box and join as a request to join as a guest, please do so. You can join just on audio or on audio and video. And while we take this little break here, or not necessarily a break, please remember to like, and any badges or gifts are appreciated because it helps expose the live to more people. And I'm going to spend the next few years trying to promote this sort of unity, more unity from the red side and the blue side, and understanding that 50 to 70 million people can change the direction of our country. And I'm saying the people that are currently running the country on both parties are so corrupted that unless we remove the influence of special interests, billionaires, and corporations, we'll lose our democracy entirely, and it will become fully an oligarchy or a corporate monarch, or something even worse, religious fascist, it could be authoritarianism. There are all types of forces that are fighting and positioning themselves that if democracy continues to wane, for lack of a better phrase, then there are forces that want to control what that looks like. And it doesn't mean there won't be voting. They have voting in Russia. I mean, does anyone seriously think that Russia is a democracy just because they have voting? It's not about voting, whether you're voting and that makes it a democracy. The North Korean government is called, what is it called? The Republic Democratic Peoples of North Korea, whatever it's called there. It's not a democracy just because you can vote. So they're going to continue to make us believe that we can vote and we can change things. But we all know our votes don't really matter because we can only vote for two people, essentially, when it comes down to it. In our states, two different people in terms of senators and representation. And then, of course, for the president, it has to be left or right. And there's 75 million people in the middle that are independents that don't have anyone to vote for. So we are all stuck into voting for someone. You think that? No, Rick, you're misunderstanding me. I don't think that the U.S. is democracy because of voting. I was making the point that I was making your point, basically. Just voting doesn't mean you're a democracy. You probably misheard me because you're in the car, not making that argument at all. Voting does not mean you're a democracy. I was making the point that Russia has voting as well, and it is clearly a dictatorship, and it's just because you vote doesn't mean anything about a democracy. Okay, we are a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. Much the same thing. So Pickle Rick MF. We are not we are a constitutional republic. You are right there, but we are a representative democracy. A constitutional republic is a representative democracy, or what I should say is that all constitutional republics are representative democracies. So if you had to draw a circle, you'd have representative democracy, and then you'd have constitutional republic within it. All constitutional republics are representative democracies. Look up the definitions, AI it, and you will see that it is a democracy. In fact, it's just a form of democracy is a constitutional republic. I know there's lots of misinformation out there about the definitions of things, and people like to conflate different terms with one another, but we are a constitutional republic and a representative democracy. Two things can be true at once. They are parts of one another. So that's hopefully that's clear on what that is. So the way you're putting it, voting isn't a real choice. Well, Lumpy Lumpin Louise, I like the username. The way you're putting it, voting isn't a real choice. It is a choice, but it's a choice between two people, and those two people that get through the primaries. It doesn't have to be like that. So as in a practical perspective, it's a choice between however you want to phrase it. It's if you're hardcore left, you'll never vote right. And if you're hardcore right, you'll never vote left, or unlikely. If you're hardcore, you're more like a tribal person. You're just going to vote for your team, right? This is not a sport, by the way, but that's how people treat it. They treat it as a sport. And that makes it that there isn't a real choice, right? Now, for the 75 million independents in the middle, it is a choice, but it's a choice between two people. And it's not a choice that represents them. It's just a choice that represents maybe a lesser evil, if you want to term it. The problem is that we really only have two choices, but it doesn't have to be like that. That's what I try and convey all the time. It almost happened in 1992. I say this all the time. There was a Reform Party. There is a Green Party. but they have no chances of winning. The 1992 Reform Party did have a chance at winning, and that would have been a third party. It had a chance to win. It was run by a very flawed candidate in Ross Perot, but it showed that it had a possibility to do something, to win and have a third party. But you can't just have a candidate and then start a party behind it. You have to have a movement first. You have to have people joining a movement or a community saying, hey, if we ever get large and powerful enough, then we'll create a third party, or then we'll vote for independence, or then we will take over another party. Whatever it might be, there are many ways to do this within the confines of the current system. So it doesn't have to be something outside the confines, and it doesn't take violence whatsoever. So there could be more choices, but we're all poisoned and manipulated into believing that there aren't. And we don't want to waste our votes, so we make sure that we vote for one side or the other. So it's more just a mindset that 340 or 150 million people that vote have a mindset that you can only vote for two ways. We could do more, but it's going to take something. And that's what I am trying to do. And that's what I hope hundreds, dozens or hundreds of other people will do, is continue to spread a message that we're all voting against our best interests on both sides, and that there's a middle ground. The compromise is winning. I say it all the time. The entire, like the Federalist versus Anti-Federalist papers, that was a compromise, and they both won. The United States was better off because we compromised. Getting your way all the time is not winning. It is in fact losing as a society. You may be winning as an individual for one particular issue here or there, but you are losing. And those people, just like right now, there is a third party right now, and it's the third party that we don't even get to vote for. It's the money that comes into politics. They are essentially the third party that gets into power without even having to get voted into power, because they're in power because they have money. And when you have money, they have influence, and that influence buys access and buys power. So you could argue that there's a Republican Party, there's a Democratic Party, but then there's the real overlords of us, and that's those people with money and all the special interests. So it's a two-party system per se in terms of voting that, you know, tries to make it seem like we're still a healthy democracy when in fact we are an unhealthy one. And because there are overlords or people with enormous amount of influence that really get the control. So thanks for the popping the likes, and I love when I get the amens, because I've had tens of thousands of people in my comments, certainly thousands, if not tens of thousands, saying, I'm in, how do we fix it? I have a link normally on my live to show a plan to fix America. It's a high-level plan. It's at tinyurl.com/TK Civics Plan. You can go to my profile and click on the link underneath my profile, and it will bring you to the plan on Medium and Substack. It's not going to happen overnight. There are no quick fixes here. But this is a race. This is a race between completely losing our individual rights and our freedoms versus whether we're going to get 50 to 70 million people to want to fight back. So again, under my profile, thanks very much. And again, I love those comments that say I'm in, because I've asked the question, do you think there are 50 to 70 million people that would want to eliminate corruption from government and replace all career politicians from both parties? And the vast majority of people, like when you talk about politics, you rarely get agreement on much. But I would say 90% of all the comments say there's much more than 50 to 70 million people. And they come from MAGA, they're liberals, they're progressives, they're conservatives, they're libertarians. Most people agree with this message, and that's the message I'm going to continue to convey, is that there are 50 to 70 million people and much more. It's just that we have to try and reach them, right? And this is just the start of trying to reach those people over many months and many years. And I can't do anything alone, right? None of us can. I don't have the influence yet. I don't want to be a content creator or an influencer, but I have to be relevant. And I can't do it alone. So if you like my messaging on things about unity and bringing people together from right and left and realize that we're being divided, all I can ask you to do is please follow me here and share the messages, share the videos. If you go to my pinned videos, the top 3 videos are really popular, and they sort of really hit the message home. It seems like some of my videos are being suppressed already by TikTok because when you talk about turn my mic up, I'm doing the best I can. It's up all the way, but I'll talk closer to the microphone. That we just have, I need your support and anyone else that conveys this message, this similar message about it has to be independence, it has to be people from the middle, bringing people together, because there are 75 million of those independents alone, that we need every one of us content creators that tries to do this, that tries to spread a message of, hey, you don't have to vote for red or blue. There could be something else. It's going to take time. Thank you very much for saying the mic's fine. I thought so as well, because my volume is up all the way. And anybody who has relatively similar frameworks in mind, I would ask you just promote their content, promote it, and tell people this is a war against your minds. And there are people that are trying to manipulate and convince you to fight about certain issues, which are mostly culture wars. And I'm saying, and other people, more and more people I'm seeing at least pop up on my feed that are saying, stop fighting. 50 to 70 million people could change everything. I have a plan. I have a specific plan, and I have a lot of experience building communities of millions of people and technical applications in tech. So I won't have to rely on TikTok in the future, or on YouTube in the future, or on Instagram. I've already built a different messaging platform. I wanted to use it once for something else, and now I have it that I could use for this message, for this mission. And I could leverage that. So if the community ever gets big enough, I can communicate directly with those people without having to worry about being suppressed. And other influencers will be able to do the same. And then we can also do all sorts of cool things to communicate directly with people, recruit candidates, independent candidates, and or third-party candidates, whatever it might be. I have a lot of ideas and plans that we can enact in order to, this obviously duopoly of the Republican and Democratic Party. It's a duopoly, right? When you have just two companies controlling everything. We have to break the duopoly of the Republican and Democratic Party. So, all right, so it's a war of free will. There's someone in the box that jumped in the box. Hard Pills 3, you're going to join next if you can answer this question, or if it's you can jump off to a little bit on the same topic. Anything that I mentioned, if you just want to ask questions about something, that's fine as well. So you're up next, Hard Pills 3. Hopefully you're ready. Join via audio or audio and video. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining.
Hey man, yeah. Sorry, I don't know why I had to turn my volume all the way up to get a hold of you.
Okay, you do have quite a bit of background noise, and I'm also getting feedback from my speaking.
It must be me then, man. I can leave and come back.
Okay, yeah, let me just join back into the box when you're ready.
Okay, cool.
All right, I had a lot of feedback because I was able to hear myself echo, and I'm sure everybody did as well, and I don't think we want to listen to that. So you'll be able to jump back in the box momentarily. We got, I don't know how to pronounce it, but doesn't matter. So we got someone else that wants to jump in the box. If you want to answer that question, do you support the Constitution? I'm happy with people, not happy, but if people don't support the U.S. Constitution and democracy, I'm happy to hear your point of view. Hey, how you doing? Welcome.
Good, man. Good to connect with you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for watching.
So, yeah, I've been interested in this idea for some time, obviously, with the discourse and the, change in politics over the last few years has been shocking to anybody that is a student of history. So, I'm interested in your ideas, like how to change things. Obviously, there's some things that other countries have done that have helped, like ranked tiered voting. But I feel like everything is so far away at this point, I just don't want to feel hopeless, but it honestly, everything feels far away. If you're a Democrat, it doesn't feel like there's anything that's being done. If you're a Republican, I either feel like you're so hard, almost like on that side, that you can't see anything in the middle that's reasonable anymore. And so it feels like it's difficult to kind of bring people together. So, I like your idea about there's so many independent people, and if talking to people on the streets and in real life, it feels like most people are more in the middle.
Yeah. You know, like you most likely have been doing, and probably a lot of people that are watching, I don't know how many decades we've all been thinking about this. Like most people agree that both parties are corrupt and it's a problem. And when you just go back, we all get a little bit, or at least I did, certainly sort of depressed and down. Like what can we do? When you just feel like we can do nothing. But when I started to really think about it objectively, and I took out of the like how hard would it be? Take that out of the equation. How difficult? How challenging would it be? When you look at the facts of it, um, it is possible to do something different. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm saying it could happen, and I'm saying it would happen, but it first has to happen once you have enough people supporting something. And it just seems like you can take any one issue, and even if you could get that issue resolved, it's not really moving the needle all that much, right? So look at whether you're talking about abortion or gun rights. We've been fighting about the same shit many times for
Right.
50 years, right? And even the things that we can agree on, take gun rights and just background checks, which 89% of Americans agree with, including those on the right. And yet we can't do that. And the same thing with stock trading for Congress people. We all know they shouldn't be enriching themselves in Congress, and yet they do it anyway, and we can't even get that passed. So like even if we could get a win, which we can't get any, joint wins. So I started to look at things objectively and challenge some of these notions and just thought to myself, well, there's nothing small that we can do. Like if you go march on Washington, you have even 5 million people. Would it really work if it was just a day long or 5 days long? No, it won't work. And can you get 5 million people to march on Washington? Not anymore. It doesn't seem like it. So my thought has always been, we're going to have to go bigger. Either there's going to have to be a lot of grassroots people on the local level working up, or we just have to go top down. It is possible, when you start looking at the Constitution and the Republican Party, Democratic Party, everybody thinks that those parties are sort of baked into this form of government that we have. They're not. There's nothing about the Democratic Party or the Republican Party in the Constitution or in the Bill of Rights or in the Declaration of Independence. There were many other parties in the beginning. What George Washington was even against having the formation of parties because he knew it would end up like this, right? There's a lot of him having speeches talking about it. So I just sort of got lost as well and just said, there's nothing else that we can do that's small, and we're going to have to go for something big. And I think big resonates with more people. So who knows?
Yeah. I think it's great that you're trying something, there's in a world where it feels like almost, as a kid, I think that a lot of us felt like, oh yeah, I could do anything when I grow up and I could have influence and I could change things. And then as you get to an adult and you're kind of sit there,
That's
especially
right.
if you are knowledgeable about things, it's more disheartening and it's more upsetting. And I kind of wish for that feeling of ignorance is bliss, that so many seem to have.
Yeah.
But the root of this is we need a strong middle, this nation's held up by the roots that run deep in faith and family and love and honor and country and community. We sit here like squabbling over, like you said, like silly things, like whether or not people are obsessing over abortions and even obsessing over guns, all important things. But like what holds us together as a people, feel like we've gotten so far away from, and we can't even get people to march anymore.
Right.
And what are these things? What's it going to take? In some of my friend circles, they said, well, people will have to be hungry and that's what'll happen. That's what'll have to happen. But I don't, if things get that bad, that's not going to be people aren't going to want to march on the streets.
Yeah. Nothing good comes from that. Right. I would say they need to be convinced, right? There has to be more people because everybody else is trying to convince us to fight with one another, but also people, because most adults realize, because we get jaded, all adults get jaded and feel like, they're saying all bold ideas sound impossible until they're possible. That's why so many big companies form when kids are in their 20s and they have time because they don't have families and they're not jaded by life, and they can form great big corporations when they're very young because they feel like their world is their oyster. Most adults don't feel like that anymore, right?
Yeah.
But there's also Steve Jobs. My thought for this channel, my creation of this channel, was basically the real motivation was from what Steve Jobs, one of Steve Jobs's quotes was. Maybe he's not the best person to look at. You know, he's obviously not a political figure, but he made the point, and it was a speech to young people and old people alike, that once you poke something, once you realize you can poke something and something comes out the other side and you can change things and you can manipulate things, once you believe that and understand that, then you realize you can change anything, because everything around in the world around us is built by people, and people can change it. People can mold it. They can shape it. That was sort of his paraphrasing what he said. And that just struck me as someone who's been an entrepreneur for a really long time and has taken a lot of risks in life, building things and creating things and having lots of failures. It's just another step, right? It's just say, okay, let's go out there and see if people want to do something different. And maybe you fail, but what's worse than failing is not starting at all.
Yeah, I agree with you, man.
Yeah.
It's I just don't know. It becomes difficult to know where to start. But I agree. Obama said something recently where he was reflecting on how when he was just a young man, and especially when he became a young senator, that he sat in a room among just people that he thought were just so well above him. I mean, a world that he couldn't imagine. And to sit there and listen to them talk, he said, yeah, some of it was impressive, but most of that was because of the way that you could see them, kind of going through the problems. But he very quickly thought, he's like, I could do better than this. Like these people are no different than me. They're different. And then he started telling people, he's like, they're no different than you. They're no different than all of us. And we need to we need to quit believing that we are subject to everyone else. And we have to get our foot in the door.
Right. And, once you get a little bit of momentum and you get a little bit of a wave, then that wave maybe grows a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. Like nothing happens overnight. Like when you hear the success stories of people and it says, that was an overnight success. And then that person says, well, you didn't see the 10 years leading up to it. Right.
Yeah.
So,
right.
I started this channel. I see other people doing something similar, which is awesome. And maybe it's going to take 100 of us, 1,000 of us, 10,000 of us. And maybe there's one person in there that has a larger audience or a larger voice and people gravitate towards it. It doesn't matter if it's me or somebody else. Just want to be part of the solution. And you get there by, you get 1,000 followers or 1,000 people that support it. And I get these comments all the time about, I'm in, let's do this. But, it's 1,000 people, then it's got to be 10,000 people, and then it's got to be 100,000, and then it's got to be 1 million. And maybe once you get to 1 million, maybe there's a start to be a little bit of a wave, right? A little bit of momentum. And that's all you can do, whether it's someone who wants to do something good for society or bad. And you could take, Trump coming down the escalator. He couldn't do it by himself. If he wanted to do what he wanted to do, he needed influence. And he needed people to follow him and spread his message, whether you think it was hateful or hopeful. And it's funny. I like to say that people don't realize that to a certain people in the United States, that Trump's message was very hopeful to a lot of those people at the same time while being hateful. And one of the things about politics is that politics is about hate versus hope. I forget who said it. I know Obama has also said it, but he conveyed it from someone else. And what I found interesting about when you look at Trump, to the people that he resonates with, it was hope that they saw. They saw hope like draining the swamp. To them, that was hope, right? Is returning things to whatever they liked. That was hope. But to another segment of society, it was hateful. So he somehow had this magic formula that, as absurd as it sounds, was able to spew hate and hope at the same time.
Yeah.
But
I think it goes to that.
Yeah. Hope is more powerful than hate at the end of the day, I think. I know
I agree.
negativity is louder than positivity, but hope is more powerful. So let's hope that is the case.
I'm hoping there's truly somebody that'll stand up, that just garners all kinds of support. Because I truly believe that, people with with only a left, or a world with only a left and right really has no head and no heart. And I feel like that's where we are now. We need people to be in the middle. We need people to stand with each other.
That's the experiment, right?
And
Because everything always drifts off to the edges. So everything has flow and momentum, and the challenge is keeping things in the middle. Like when Hitler was coming to power in Nazi Germany, in the beginning, even many adversaries thought what he was doing was very good because he was propping up his people. He wasn't, but as he continued to flow, and then he started to ban political parties or go after his adversaries, then there was a momentum and a flow. And once that flow happens and it gets faster, it only leads to one place, and that's fascism, right? It only leads.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the spectrum, if you go too far left, and this is what people don't understand as well, is if you get too liberal and too progressive, you know where you end up? You end up in communism. Like those are like the bottom of the streams on both sides. And you have this peak, and I like to think of it as a peak because it is the epicenter, or the best of everything is the balance between obviously both sides of that spectrum. But if you don't actively fight against a flow either too far to the left or too far to the right, you'll end up on one of those sides. And that's exactly what happened in Nazi Germany. It was the fascists versus the communists, and the fascists ended up winning because they banned the Communist Party and they basically took care of their adversaries. And so it went one way or the other. It could have went the other way.
yeah,
Right. So I always find that fascinating.
yeah, that's super fascinating.
Well, I'd ask
It's
is,
a hard balance to match.
yeah, please share everybody's videos that speaks of something in the middle, because I think that's the only way at this point. That's, I think, the only way we end up eliminating corruption, because it's really the corruption at the top that is continuing to divide all the people, right? This is not a real war that's going on between blue and red. This is a manufactured war by social media, by influencers, by politicians, by special interest groups. This is a manufactured division of society that we have to recognize and then fight against.
Yeah, yeah, really truly need a world that like pulls back this idea of family and work and what value that has, and its decency and kind of the love of our neighbors, and even putting our children first. I mean, that's what like pulls our world together, and instead it's like all these other abrupt issues that are just trying to pull us apart. I mean, I just feel like as a nation we've kind of forgotten our roots, and we need to get back to them. And if we could get back to like groups that like really strive to build a community again, then we truly could like have like a really good movement on our hands. And
Do you feel like 50 to 70 million people, like to you, when someone says that, does that seem like a ridiculously absurd number?
honest to God, to you, like I think that if there was somebody that came in and was like defied the odds of what they thought that someone that was trying to be in the middle would be, and I feel like a lot of the far right acts like any man or person that's in the middle would be somebody that's weak, but it defies that, and someone that's in the middle that can speak to liberals because they have a head and a heart and want the best for their children and their world, and then can find words that just bring everybody together. I feel like there's something that can happen, and I've honestly been so disappointed in this world, this nation that we've lived in, that somehow, somewhere along the way, that we have so limited options in who we have. And part of that's probably because it's curated, like you were saying. It's a manufactured war that's going on, that we cannot find someone that could represent us in such a way that would like build a better nation, that could truly push us straight down the middle. It's that balance between having good for the people that need it, and make it free, but also like have really good business that strives for innovation, that puts our children first. It allows us to grow. We can weed out the things that are bad and get rid of the noise. But we need a community for that. And
I always thought it was going to be one
build
of two things. I think is the only solution. Either we have one of those generational leaders that steps up, that somehow is able to, crossed the divide. And, someone like, whether it was Lincoln or there's JFK as two examples, someone that just really crosses the divide. And then the community builds behind that. But I hope it's not too late for that. But it seems like anyone that comes up on one side or the other, in order to win their primaries, by the time they become popular, they're so not indoctrinized, but so,
know what I mean?
the other side already completely assassinates their character and their true positions that it seems like even if that person did come up, they would be so confined to one side because they would be just character assassinated.
Yeah.
And then
That and
yeah.
if you're trying to work with other people, I was trying to think the show West Wing. I remember thinking like that portrayed what like a very hopeful administration would look like.
Is this the first time watching my live?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, so listen to this. So I have this on my vocal pad. So it's funny that you said that. Listen to this.
If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always?
Hey,
and with a
remember
straight
this?
face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK.
I'm going to pause that for a minute. Did you say West Wing or did you say Newsroom?
I've heard that one as well, but I said West Wing.
Okay, West Wing was definitely more liberal. That was Newsroom. Somehow I conflated the two,
balance.
which is my mistake. So Newsroom was meant to be more independent, and so forth. So I just thought that was unique that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I love that scene, and it speaks to that imperfect nature of what America is supposed to be, but also like that idealistic view that we have of ourselves too. But you need that. I mean, honestly, you need people to be like irrationally idealistic into what we can be, because they're the people that like will change the world potentially.
Right. Agreed.
But yeah, maybe it'll be a young person then. I don't know. We'll
maybe there's a bunch of influencers that start building a community and start waking people up to this sort of independent mindset or this unity mindset, and then maybe a younger person or middle-aged person comes up and actually grabs hold of it, right, and takes it even farther. That's what I think has to happen.
Yeah, I'm just worried that like so much big tech right now is so engaging to young people, that these billionaires have like curated their feeds to such a high degree that, I mean, it's just exploitation at this point.
It is.
I mean, I feel like their data's being mined. They monetize their innocence. They've scrolled like our children into anxiety. But man, like it sucks because like they're not a product. Like they're not, like our children are not for sale. Like we're supposed to be their caretakers, and here we have this world that's like curating them into a path that like we can't ever even fathom.
Yeah, they're
instead of
indoctrinating
listening
them.
to they're indoctrinating him, and it's not. I don't know. It's just not fair.
It's by design though too, right? I call it the manosphere, right? They're poisoning young people's minds. I have many young people of my own here, sons and daughters, and you can just see it. There's a very different mindset with young people is today than what we had, and it's because they've been indoctrinated and their minds have been poisoned, and their critical thinking skills when it comes to politics, and not to blame them because it's hard, right? It's hard when you're young to understand, but they're being indoctrinated and manipulated, and like you said, exploited is one of my favorite words, to just not question anything, just to be indoctrinated to one point of view.
Yeah.
And to be products, like you said, they end up just being products.
Yeah, everybody ends up being products.
I mean, that's what Charlie Kirk was doing, and that's what Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan and Candace Owens on the right, they're doing all that, and then there's plenty of people on the left that are doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah. I think it's just easier to define the ones on the right because it follows the same kind of pattern.
Yeah, it's more of a hateful pattern, for sure. It's, without a doubt, they spread more blame. It's more about blaming people. Like that's what young people are just blaming the world. They blame boomers. They blame politicians. They blame women. Men blame women. Women blame men. Gen Z blames the boomers. It's just a complete, always someone else to blame instead of, realizing that it's actually you're being manipulated to blame people by certain individuals or groups.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thanks for joining. I really appreciate your point of
thanks.
view, and hope to see you here again.
Yeah, it's nice talking to you, man.
You
Have
too.
a good one.
We'll see you.
Bye.
All right, we got someone else that's going to jump in the box, I think. Hard Pills 3, did we try to get you in here a moment ago? I think we did, so if you're on standby, I'll go live when I get home in like an hour. Let's see, I just got the number one gifter. I support the Republic in the United States of America, the country I live, as do I.
Hey, man.
Hey.
Can you hear me better?
Yes, loud and clear. Welcome back.
Awesome. Thanks. Wanted to obviously take your original point, but I did want to talk about something the guy from before said, which is people are marching. I actually think you're wrong. People are marching. For No King's Day, there was 11.8 million. We need 11.5, 3.5% of the population to shut the country down. The issue is marching isn't doing it, right? Marching doesn't actually solve the problem. It brings eyes. It says what we want, but we already know they don't care what we want, right? So doing things like what Italy did with the general strike, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that they're sending ships to protect that flotilla in the ocean. Spain sent 2. Italy could only send 1 because they don't have anybody to freaking man the other ship because the country's shut down. And so, like, good on them for, even while they're dealing with their own thing, you know, doing the right thing. But I also think they're doing the right thing because the country's shut down, right? And so I think we keep forgetting, and it's come from the red waves and the vote blue no matter who's. All of that has been us actively giving up our voting because we have to. They've basically said, you have to settle because we're not going to listen. Right? That's what they've told us. That's why you hear people on the left and right all telling each other that, mainly the left right now, that, you know, well, who's your candidate? Who's going to solve this? Who's going to save that? And it's usually dinos arguing with more left and progressive populist people and saying, like, you guys don't have a policy. And it's like, yeah, that's because the Democratic Party sues people off of ballots when it pulls the party line too far left. And so, like, something that happened in the last election is that Kamala Harris lost 1,000 counties that Biden won. Why? I think the last guy touched on it. It's that you have these moderates in these kind of red, purplish counties, and they have a very specific set of standards. And if you come with fear, they see you as an extremist. And her whole campaign was, I'm not the other guy. I'm going to be like Joe. But half of the party was upset at Joe. So now you've got fractures on the left who are basically, it's because the Democratic Party loves to be a sponge and absorb identities and then kick the ones out that don't meet the donation requirements. And then you've got the right who I think you said it right earlier. He sold hope, false hope, but he sold hope. And so those moderates in the middle chose to go right. I don't think they're smart for it. We're seeing farmers get, you know, just demolished right now by the soybean thing with China. But we've also got just like regular people who voted for Trump, whose spouses got arrested by ICE, some of which are citizens, and they thought it was never going to come to their doorstep. You've got, you know, business owners losing just like everything that they built essentially because they can't afford to pay workers what needs to be paid. And so they can't find quality workers. And so you got a bunch of warm bodies and the quality goes down. I'm in the restaurant industry. I'm watching guys who own restaurants for 20, 30 years go under overnight. And I'm watching venture capitalists open 6 bars in 3 months and demolish the little guy. It's the Dollar General model. Right. So to your main question, the reason I say all of that is because Thomas Jefferson believed that the Constitution needed to be rewritten every 19 years. He believed that the land was for the generation living on it and going to be living on it for the next several decades, and not for the people who were there who built it. It's like, it's your time to retire, which goes back to needing age restrictions and not letting somebody with dementia be a senator and be in a nursing home. But also, back then the life expectancy was like 35. So they were like very aware that if I'm in my 30s and I did all my time serving my country, I probably shouldn't be the one making rules for the kid who's 15 who just signed up for the militia of his town. Now we have different life expectancy today, and I give people that, but I still say if children are our future, then why do we keep having 70 and 80-year-olds running everything?
Well, I would say that, there's two solutions to that, or just one, right? If being a politician cannot be a career and it has to be a temporary civic duty, you won't have old people there. Or if they are older and they get elected, they obviously got elected by the population and they deserve to be there. There's people out there that want age limits and they think that's the solution. You can't have these arbitrary, discriminatory type rules in place. So, but I understand that you don't want people who are 90 years old in office. But if they're completely lucid and they're 80 and they're just becoming a politician for the first time and they get elected, there's no reason not to have those people. So term limits and restricting being a politician as a profession would eradicate all that, right?
But I'm with you on the term limits thing. The reason I think the age thing matters is because we're talking about a document that's essentially dead that we occasionally zhuzh up over the decades, when it's supposed to be a living document that has modernized language that makes sense for the time. I helped. I was a consultant on an EU dementia caregiver grant that got $10 million for people in Europe who were taking care of loved ones with dementia and needed more support. And the verbiage in there, some of it was contradictive. And if I like to think of Temple Grandin, the autistic woman who saved the cattle industry. They had 100 different rules that all contradicted each other that was costing the industry billions of dollars in today's money. And she simplified it to 10 rules.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying we need to make a 10 rule document. I know we got the Bill of Rights. But I'm not saying we need to have a 10 rule document and that's it. But I am saying that having guys on a committee that are deciding if TikTok is spying on us when they don't understand how Wi-Fi works is kind of a problem.
Of course. And when your government is getting involved and actually assigning a company to their friends is not democracy at all. That's actually could be fascism. It could be authoritarianism. It's obviously is no business of a government deciding who gets to take over an existing company.
For sure.
But anyway, so I ask you one question though about you think the Constitution needs to be rewritten like Jefferson did. I would say that's probably not, that's not a real viable solution in terms of practical sense. But what part of I disagree, while I don't agree with, from my own perspective and our personal beliefs, that everything in the Constitution is perfect. But I don't think is the Constitution just because it's an old document. I think if you extract the Constitution today, it's still an incredibly effective document and forms the backbone of society. And it would be silly or absurd to try and change it because you're never going to change it to something better when you have 350.
But there's nothing to say that we couldn't carry over things that are working or are fundamental.
Well, that's what you have amendments for, right? So if you want to amend the Constitution,
how often are we using that? That's the problem.
Well, that is the problem, and that's a people problem. That's not a system of government problem. That's the people in government.
Here's the issue with the system of government problem. You and I and 80% of the population can agree on something, and it still only has 30% chance of getting even looked at. Not approved, just looked at. And that's, again, lobbyists. That's old people who are making money off of insider trading, and they know that if they change the policy, they're going to lose money. That's all of that stuff. But when it comes down to it, it doesn't make sense to have a document that uses words that are no longer part of the standard English language, and sure, it's been updated and slightly modified to make more sense. It makes sense that we're going to talk about gun laws with the right verbiage. It makes sense that we're going to dive. We don't have militias anymore. I mean, we do, but they're not the way that they were. Back then, you had to go to monthly check-ins with your gun and actually practice and actually try, right? So I feel like we keep trying to do what the founding fathers wanted. It's like we can keep some of the basis of what we hope society to be and also realize that the current system we have is not democracy. It's capitalism, but they don't go hand in hand. They can't. One automatically invalidates the other because profit is the game, and it means that a monopoly is going to form at some point down the line, whether it's today or 100 years from now. You're gonna get the GEs, you're gonna get the big 7 companies that own 90% of the brand.
Well, we used to break up those companies back in the 70s and 80s when they got too large, right? And now because of the different how divided both parties are, you can't do that anymore. difficult.
I mean, listen, I'm of the thought that we are doing this wrong in general. I personally am not thinking we're voting our way out of this. There are a lot of groups on this app that are trying to do alternative planning. Something that the woman from the Juniors Women League of America said is that in order to change the world, it often takes a small group of people with like mind in order to do that. In fact, that might be the only way. There's a lot of people working on the ground in their local communities to try to make those changes. I don't know that we're going to have a federal government the way that we think we do now. And to act like the Constitution is what we need to rest it on, I think this is the perfect time to have something new. I think this is the perfect time to say, okay, there's some shiz in there that we need to address that wasn't addressed, and there's some stuff that we haven't even talked about because the forefathers never were going to think about having those conversations. Yeah. And I'm not going to get into specifics because this isn't a political talk. This sounds a lot more like policy, and I want to get there. But
I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist, and the U.S. Constitution is still the greatest form of government. Forms the formation of the greatest form of government the world has ever seen in terms of the scale. And you can't start something fresh or new. The only reason we had an opportunity to start something new and fresh back in the 1700s is because we took over a new land and there was a relatively small population. And even then it was really difficult to come to this. So to think that we can start anew, I think is a complete pipe dream. And I have a lot of dreams and ideas and pipe dreams myself, but you're never going to start something new. It takes a green slate to do that. You have to work within the confines is my belief. So I understand your respect to your point of view, but you can work within this system. Maybe you're right and we won't vote ourselves out of it, but I am just worried, and it will be a dreaded day that if we can't vote ourselves out of it, then it's going to be too far gone. And when you turn to violence, if you think that something better is going to come out of it, it won't. Absolutely not. We're living in the exception, right, of the last 80 years of a democratic system around the world, and the most free, most economically lucrative time around the world with the least amount of poverty and the least amount of wars has just been around the last 80 years. Everything prior to that, relatively speaking, has been just anarchy, right? So to think that this United States democracy fails and that we go to something better, evolutionary, I think is not.
I mean, I believe it's failing in front of us. That's sort of the problem. Marx didn't plan.
The people are failing. It's the people are failing us because of the corruption by all the different forces.
On both sides. I'm tired of hearing Schumer say they wrote another strongly worded letter like my grandpa
Right.
writing my principal for me or something.
Right.
I'm also tired of seeing Mike Johnson hide behind things because that's what he's paid to do. I think Marx was not expecting us to have poor people who could afford ice cream and a Netflix subscription. Right. We are, like you said, the exception in new territory. And also, every revolution that's ever worked, including the labor revolution, including Stonewall, and including pretty much the Bastille, all of it included violence. And to think that we're going to get out of a situation where democracy is quite literally being pissed on and that the checks and balances are no longer truly working because everybody thought everyone was just going to be in decorum and everyone was just going to be polite and play the politics game in the front, kind of like Veep, that TV show where, in the back, they're all best friends bitching at each other, but in front of a camera, of course, they're saying the opposite. I think we're past that. I think we are going. I think the Democrats are going the way of the Whigs because they're fractioning, and I think the Republicans are evolving into their final form.
At the end of the day, it's whatever happens is the people let it happen. Either you're right, and it's very binary, right? There's very binary outcome here, with obviously many nuances behind that binariness. If you have, that's not a word, of course, binariness, but nonetheless, it's binary. You either have enough people that force things to move in the right direction, and you can vote yourself out of it, or you don't have enough people. You can absolutely, by mathematical fact and the basis of power of the people, you can work your way out of this problem. But if you never get the people together to do it, it will absolutely go in the direction that you are fearful of, and we all are fearful of it going. It's really that simple. If there were 100 million Americans that decided firmly that they want to eliminate all corruption from politics, which is sort of always my messaging, and enact term limits and make sure being a politician is not a career, you would change it. Now, you might think that's also a pipe dream, like your pipe dream as well, about changing the Constitution, but it's binary. You either have the people and it happens, and you have a leader that ends up as able to drive it home. Like, think about how absurd it was at the time to eradicate slavery and what Lincoln had to go to make that happen, right? That was an enormous, at the time, such an inconceivable possibility that they could unite the country and abolish slavery. But it happened.
Yeah, but that came back to money too, and so I bring it back to, again, like you were asking earlier to the guy, like, do you think we can get 50 million? You don't need it. You need 11. 3.5% of the country can shut the entire system down if we stop working. And the reason I don't have hope in that is because we had to pay people to stay home for COVID.
Right.
So
you can't do that. Right. I don't think you can do that either.
No. So I mean, but I guess my point is we've incentivized people to sit back.
Right.
And so,
well, you also you also can't do it. Let's say you brought up No Kings movement earlier. The problem with No Kings, it was fully backed by very progressive left-leaning organizations that were easy to discredit. The same thing would be with the, failing to remember, Convention of States.
It was one of the Waltons. It was one of the Walmart families.
Maybe a progressive in the Walmart family, but it was still.
I mean, maybe, but I guess what I'm saying is like, it's fishy, and also the point is that I'm with you.
It's not organic, right? It's not. It wasn't organic.
It's not. It's not. It's a bunch of signs and hats, and everybody's again just pointing at the different colored hats and saying those hats are bad, and it's an up versus down argument.
The Convention of States is the same thing, right? The Convention of States, in theory, makes a lot of sense, but if you want to get 34 state legislators to do something, go to the Convention of States webpage, and the first thing they do is ask you for money. Then you look at the people behind it, and it's a bunch of former career politicians. So again, easy to discredit. It's not organic. Those things just can't work. So these protests that are organized by one side or the other, they're destined to fail because there's nothing. And that's why you can say the Occupy movement on Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, had some momentum, but it was leaderless because it was organic. And that actually had some power at the time.
Obama threw them away as soon as he got into office. Half the reason he got into office was because they were bringing up a lot of the issues we're talking about today still. And then he pivoted his platform to go for that. And then as soon as he's in office, it's like, yeah, we're not really going to do that. Yeah. And I think I guess I'll leave you with this. I had talked to someone who's somewhat famous, who ran for office here in Chicago. And his personal life got lambasted. Guy's a professional songwriter and rapper. He had a history. It cleaned up, father, did the whole right family thing, but they pulled out his past and destroyed him. Now, I interviewed him later and said, like, hey, would you ever run for office again? He says, no, you don't run for office in this country. You buy politicians or you buy cities. Those are your only two options if you want to actually have a say in what goes on big policy.
Well, you know what? I would argue, actually, to show counterwise, I think, I'm not thinking this clearly through, but MAGA movement was not based on, there was money, of course, behind it, but you could argue that Trump's rise to power was not based on money. It was more organic.
I will give you some of that. Cambridge Analytica and some of the things that came out of that would show that there was powers that be pushing things certain ways. However, it was the first time that meme culture was actively used against both sides. And it was both sides getting the misinformation. It's why it was so hard when they'd say fake news, fake news. Well, everything was fake news. We didn't know if this was a real headline or if this is just a screenshot.
But the initial movement, like Rick is saying here in the comments, Elon Musk spent $280 million to back Trump. And that's true. So later on, there was clearly a lot of money. But you could easily make the argument that in the early days, the backing of Trump was a more organic movement. Even if you believe it to be very nefarious by certain groups of people, it was organic, right? So that shows, even though that's not the way I would ever want it to be done, because it certainly wasn't for the people, by the people, it was a more organic. And so that proves that it could happen. You could have the same pendulum could swing the other way, and there could be someone on the other side that somehow is able to drive a same movement. Now, of course, Trump was already well known and a well known figure, and he was a billionaire, but he doesn't use his own money for anything, right? Never has. He's never spent his own money to do anything. So,
But I mean, AOC would be the example of the nobody who becomes somebody, and now she's basically a Dixiecrat. She wouldn't call it, things that were going on in the Democratic Party what they were. And due to that fact, there's a lot of people who don't trust her. But back when she was running, her whole thing was like, look at the establishment attacking.
absolutely. Right. And that's why she became popular in her zone. And I would say Bernie, of course, would have been the opposite of Trump for the Democratic side, because he was also going against the grain and had an organic movement for the most part, a more organic movement, let's call it that. He certainly did have some backing. But then the Democratic Party basically shut him out, right? So,
Yeah, I mean,
so it
if
is
you wanna
possible.
talk
I think
about
the way to
road-
think is optimism, that it is possible for these things to happen. And MAGA and Bernie Sanders have shown that it is possible. It's difficult, but they
I
do.
guess my question to you then is, though, in every one of those stories we keep coming back to, and then the system got in the way, right?
Mhm.
And so that is where you lose me with, because like I've got guys who are building land back initiatives where they're looking for defunct land and land that the government can't offload, buy it cheap, build commune style communities, overtaking old malls, overtaking old school buildings, colleges, things like that, and turning them into generational, and trying to make things like a co-op so everybody has ownership in it. These guys are building blockchain contracts that are essentially mini constitutions, but they're doing it on their own way. They're doing it with their own idea that even in that plan they're going to need their own security, they're going to need a militia. So like the irony here is like, I think we actually do need to do a reset. I don't think it means start over from scratch. I think it means take the stuff that's foundational and the stuff that keeps causing problems. I think there's probably some pretty simple ways that other countries have already figured out, since we're the only country with those problems, that like we could easily adjust, but it's gonna take everybody rejecting, or at least 3.5% of us rejecting the current system and saying no more. I'm not going to work. You're not making $1 off me until we have a real talk about what it means to serve the people.
If that ever were to happen, I'm all for it, and I'd be an advocate of it. I would have my doubts as well, but we all have our doubts about each one of our ideas, right? But thanks for joining. I really appreciate your perspective.
Yeah, man, no, good talk, good live.
Hey, we'll
I'm
see
following
you.
you.
Thanks. Bye-bye. All right. I know I do a bad job of, I'd like to try to keep things a little bit more concise if possible, but that's not always the case. And but they're good conversations, even though today's live doesn't have a lot of support. Who knows why that is? Sometimes I have many hundreds of people in here, and lately it's been a little bit less, which is a little strange. It makes me wonder about, how magnified or amplified or how limited my reach is being. But nonetheless, I'll continue here, and I'm streaming live on YouTube as well. So if you haven't subscribed on YouTube, please do so as well. Those are the two places. I'm just getting started on YouTube. If something happens here with TikTok, I want to be able to continue to grow an audience outside of just here on TT. So thanks for the likes and thanks for sharing. I don't think I have anybody else in the queue. I do not. It's been a good live. I wanted to see how this topic worked out for most people. I wish there was more people in here, but again, that's partially I need your help as much as to do that. Please read not read, but watch one of the 3 videos that are pinned in my profile, and read the plan, the TK Civics plan to bring citizens plan to bring representation back to the people. You can find the link underneath my profile. Like I said, subscribe on YouTube, send the hearts out, and just please tell people about it. It takes, 16,000 people now, maybe 100,000 people later, maybe 1 million people thereafter. And like the last individual said, he thinks we need 11 million. I think it's more, but for a different reason. At the end of the day, we just need people who are sensible and reasonable, that do want to support democracy and the U.S. Constitution as a whole, because I don't think we should tear it down by any means. That would be absurd. And try and bring people together and stop fighting one another, stop arguing about issues. So I'm going to grab some dinner for tonight, and I'll be back most likely tomorrow, probably around 6 p.m. ish, 5 or 6 p.m. ish Eastern time. I'm probably going to start once I get my studio set up, I'm going to do lives more often and figure out a way. I need to be able to edit videos faster. This is all very time consuming to do lives and to do videos and to try and become relevant as much as possible so that I can expose different views and ideas. And it doesn't mean all the ideas and views that I have are exactly the way to do it. But I hope that it opens up eyes and these conversations do convince people, and then that will grow into something larger. So thanks for all the people watching. Thanks for all the hearts and the videos. So I'm going to shut down the live for today, and I will see everybody tomorrow. And I hope you join me then. We'll see you. And I'm going to leave you. Oh, by the way, before you go, the few people, I always like to play the intro to the newsroom as ending, because this is important. Just please listen to the words. And if you haven't seen the intro to the newsroom, this is Jeff Bridges being an independent against Republicans and Democrats in their point of view. It's such a motivating piece.
France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom.
All right.
And yeah, you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is, there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite? Sure used to be. We stood up for what was right. We fought for moral reasons. We passed laws, struck down laws for moral reasons. We waged wars on poverty, not poor people. We sacrificed. We cared about our neighbors. We put our money where our mouths were, and we never beat our chest. We built great big things, made ungodly technological advances, explored the universe, cured diseases, and we cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy. We reached for the stars, acted like men. We aspired to intelligence. We didn't belittle it. It didn't make us feel inferior. We didn't identify ourselves by who we voted for in the last election, and we didn't scare so easy. We were able to be all these things and do all these things because we were informed by great men, men who were revered. First step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. America is not the greatest country in the world anymore. Enough?
And TikTok to help you get more people to discover your videos. You can also use Coin Balance to pay for orders, guide more people to your website, and improve your chances to gain followers. Try it now. Promote your video today.